Hello, everybody. How are you? I'm so happy to be a part of this conference. Greetings to you all from Los Angeles. My name is Binnur Karevli, and I'm a writer, producer, director of film and television. And I'm here today because I wanted to talk to you a little bit about adapting novels or literary source material to film and series. So the good thing for a lot of you who I'm assuming are writers and have stories or novels that you might be interested in seeing made into television series or films. So to a lot of you, I think these are really great and exciting times because there's so much more demand for content these days. With the advent of the streaming platforms like Netflix, Hulu, and now Disney Plus, and every day a new platform is coming out. With these platforms, there's such a need for content. So because of this, we see more and more books are being optioned, stories are being optioned, and then they are turned into films or series for these platforms. So this is a great time if you are interested in having your literary work be adapted onto the screen. I just wanted to give you a little bit my perspective coming from the other side, which is being the creative who is actually adapting the source material. So I hope that it will help you and give you a little bit of information. I will talk a little bit about my own experience. I did the first Turkish Netflix series called The Protector, and this was based on a book. It was inspired by a book, so that was an interesting case study for me, and I will talk about that. And I'm also working on a couple of other book adaptations at the moment. So I would like to share my experiences with you. First of all, I think adapting literary source material, IP, is a challenging, it's a really challenging process because sometimes a great piece of literature doesn't necessarily translate as well to the screen. So, and why does that happen? I think that there are several reasons, of course. But for me, when I read a short story or a novel or even a news article, I always think in the back of my head, would that make a good film, or would that make a good series? So sometimes I'm reading a novel, I fall in love with it. I love the poetry of the writing and the depth of the characters, but somehow I just know that it might not translate that well to the screen, because I do feel that literature and filmmaking are two different types of storytelling. So what do I look in a novel or literary work when I read it is I look for an interesting concept or very interesting characters or something really, really authentic. So these are the things that I look for when I'm thinking, well, like, would I want to adapt this? Would I work on this? But of course, the subject matter has to grab me as well. But I wanted to go over a little bit of the experience I had with The Protector. Of course, each experience is unique to itself because each, when an IP is optioned, how it's optioned and what kind of an agreement is made with the author depends a lot on how things turn out, because you know, you have to usually make some changes or additions, especially if you're turning a novel into a series. As a creative, you have to think about multiple seasons, so sometimes you would have to think about, you know, adding some extra plot lines or extra characters in order to enable that. So there are always some changes that are made, even to very well-known literary works, so that they become successful on their own as the TV series or film. So the agreement with the author depends a lot. I mean, some authors might not want any changes, which would, I think, create difficulties. In our case, with The Protector, we had the author was very willing to work with us, and she was very gracious in knowing that we would have to make changes because of different reasons. So let me just tell you a little bit about that process and how I got involved. I think it was year 2016. And I'm a fan of many genres, and one of them is fantasy, action, adventure. And a friend of mine knew about that, and she told me about this book that just came out, that her friend wrote a book. And fantasy fiction is really not a big genre in Turkey, so this book had just come out, but not many people knew about it. So I read it, and I really enjoyed it, because I felt like, even though it was kind of conventional in the sense that it had all the markings of a, you know, young hero and the sort of the fantasy fiction markings, it also had this very unique element in it. So basically, the story was about an 18-year-old young man who inherits a talismanic shirt, and this talismanic shirt gives him superpowers, and he fights his enemies and saves Istanbul. So this was the basic premise. And I really love the fact that the author had used the talismanic shirt as a as part of this story, because I felt like that was the authentic piece that made this particular story really interesting. For those of you who might not know, talismanic shirts are these very thin inner shirts that are a part of the Islamic Middle Eastern culture, especially the Ottoman Empire. The sultans had these shirts made for them, and they were made at a certain time, you know, astrologically auspicious time, and a lot of prayers and symbols and writings were woven into these shirts. And they would wear it when they would go on a campaign or battle underneath their armor. So these shirts are right now, a couple of them are exhibited at the Topkapı Museum in Istanbul. And they are real, and actually the mysteries of these shirts have not been deciphered yet, because nobody really knows some of the formulas, symbols, writings, prayers that were put onto these shirts. So I love the fact that the author used this element, which made it immediately a very universal but authentic story. So so I optioned the book, I talked to the author, and then I pitched it to Netflix. Of course, I had a production company that partnered up with me, and all these other people around me, and then it worked out. You know, this became the first show. Netflix bought the idea, and then the real process started after that. So we knew that we would make some changes because there was only one book, and we have to, of course, always think about all these other seasons that will follow. So we knew that we needed to change quite a bit of things in the novel, not because of the novel, it's just because of the nature of the business. But then the biggest change happened when we ended up casting this phenomenal actor, a Turkish actor who has a huge following in Latin America, Middle East, Eastern Europe, and he really embodied the essence of this character, but he was already 27. So the whole story was really written for an 18-year-old, but you know, our character was the actor we chose, and Netflix really loved this actor, was older. So because of that, we had to start really changing things. So when that change happened, then we really changed the whole environment, the character, his background. So pretty much then it became that our series is inspired by this book. So the book is great on its own, and our series turned out really wonderful on its own. And we were able to do this because of the understanding between the author and Netflix and all the legal stuff. So this doesn't necessarily happen all the time, and it's not the norm at all that we would change everything so much. So if you read the book and saw the series, really there's the only common thing is that there's a talismanic shirt and that there are enemies that are, you know, trying to take over Istanbul. So basically, this was our case study. And I think this is a rare one. Usually, you know, when a book is optioned, the story, or at least the majority of the story components, stay the same. But this also gives me an opportunity to talk a little bit about the essence. I think sometimes a successful adaptation is really more about the essence of the story and the essence of the characters than the details. So I feel that as a creator, as a writer who's working on other adaptations at the moment too, if you get the essence of the story and then you put your own interest, your own heart, your own vision to it and adapt it that way, if you have that freedom, then it usually creates a work of its own and allows the creators this freedom to bring something new to the existing source material. So I think that the successful adaptation or inspiration is really all about capturing the essence, capturing the tone, the style, the heart of the story. And sometimes this might differ from one screenwriter to another. For example, two screenwriters can read a novel, and what they react to, what they love, might be slightly different. Like whenever I read a novel, I'm always interested in the female characters, especially if the main character is a male, just because this is my interest. I'm always thinking about, you know, the female characters. Is there something that could be done to just make them stronger? So I think that each creator has their own kind of vision to add to the source material. So I just wanted to also talk a little bit about some other, adaptations that we've seen recently, and just give a couple of examples. I mean, I think since everybody knows about Game of Thrones. That's a great example. That there were, I believe, 5 books that existed. I read all the books as they were making the series. But even then, because the books are so dense and so wonderful, and there are more characters in the books, but you also have to hook your audiences. They made some major changes, even with the existing material. For example, the character of Sansa is really different than it is in the books. Certain storylines they ended up completely cutting and expanding on some of the other storylines. So they, even with a book like Game of Thrones series, which has super fans and thousands, hundreds, maybe millions of people who were already fans of the books, the creators made some changes that worked really well, and the series holds itself as a slightly separate entity than the books. And then, some other successful adaptations, I could think of Big Little Lies, which I thought was a wonderful novel, and it was set in Australia. And I'm not sure why, but maybe to get a larger access to a wider audience, they set it in the US, and it worked fine. They made some changes. They kept one of the storylines for season 2, which is also understandable, but the essence of the story just remained. It didn't really make much of a difference that it was set in a different country, because the story was much more about the characters and the conflicts. So that worked really well. And I think Little Fires Everywhere is another series that's adapted from a very successful book. And there too, there was a big addition, I would say, that one of the main characters, her race is not specified in the book. But then by casting an African-American actress, it just really heightened everything. I mean, on top of the dynamics and the conflicts that existed in the book, just adding this racial undertones made everything just much more heightened. I think these are some examples that I wanted to give you to just show how there are usually always some additions and changes that happens when, a book goes on a journey of adaptation onto the screen. And usually, whenever there's a little bit of freedom for the creators to make some changes, it usually ends up working really wonderfully well. And ultimately, I think if you have the source material, you would want it to be successful when it's adapted. You don't want it to follow line by line, but really create success on its own. So I think this brings me to the conclusion that I do think it's very important for the author of the source material to end up partnering up with creators that they trust the creator's vision, which is usually a team of people and also executives and all that good stuff, but that there should be a trust between the two, because I do know that as a writer also, whenever you write something, it becomes your baby, and it's really hard to trust that other people will be able to respect your vision and respect the essence of the story that you've written. So I think that this mutual trust is very, very important, because I feel like making a series or a film is a real collaborative form. and there are many, many other elements come into play that end up, you know, causing the creators make some changes. So it's already a difficult process. So I think that initial trust is really, really important. And I'm currently working with a writer who's really been wonderful in trusting me with his series of books. So I have had so much fun working on them, and we'll see how that pans out. But as I conclude this conversation, I just wanted to say that it's really important to find that person that you can trust your material to. And you have every right, of course, as authors, to ask the right questions to make sure that you are in a relationship that will create the best outcome. So if you have any questions or any other comments, you can follow me on Instagram, or you can send me some of your questions through my website. Thank you so much. This has been really fun to talk to you about this really exciting process of making literary materials into TV and film. Thank you. Be safe and see you soon.